Hey, this is Scott from What You Seek, and today we are going to look at the Seiko Presage Cocktail Time SRPB43. Now this watch is new for 2017, but it's really based off of a watch that came out in 2010, and that was the SRPB43, and that was a very popular model. It was available in Japan only, so it was referred to as a JDM, or Japanese Domestic Market. This watch that we have here today falls into the Presage line. The Presage line is a line of all mechanical watches that Seiko introduced in 2016. And this here, this model that we have, is part of one of 8 different variations in this Cocktail Time lineup in the Presage collection. Now, each of the watches that is in the Cocktail Time is inspired by a specific cocktail. So in this case, this is this blue here that you see on the dial. This is inspired by a cocktail called skydiving. So let's talk about the case first, and then we'll get into this amazing dial. So this is a 40.5 millimeters across here. We have a 20 millimeter width for the strap, and it's 12.5 millimeters tall. The case is 3 parts really. You've got this center part that goes across here. We have a screw down back, and then we have this top bezel. And as you can see, everything is polished on the case. There is no brushing. And all the edges have a very nice soft radius to it. It's nice just to rub your hand, your fingers over this guy. It's soft. It has a wonderful feel. No sharp edges anywhere on this guy. It has a water resistance of 5 bar, 50 meters. So you're fine in the rain and washing hands and that kind of stuff, but it is not designed to really go swimming. The crown, I love this crown, and it's an automatic watch. We'll talk about the movement a little later, but I think this fits in perfect with what would be a hand wound type of a watch. But you can see you've got the S there. It's filled in with some white there to get that to stand off. Real easy to change, set the time, wind if you need to. The crystal, look at that thing. They call it a box-shaped crystal, so it rises up and then it's flat. There's no dome to the top of it. It does provide some really cool distortion on the edges here. So normally we see crystals like this with more of the vintage looking watch. This is not a vintage in any way, but I love the way that this crystal works on this watch. And it is made out of the Seiko Hardlex. I have 3 watches with this type of a crystal, and I have not a scratch. It hasn't broken on me, anything like that. So let's jump into that dial. The dial has just a very slight tint of blue to it. There's another model that's based off of a different cocktail that has a much darker blue to it. But this, in certain lights, looks silver, and then sometimes you see the blue kind of popping out at you. And you can see that this sunray pattern on here, which is so cool, and that the pattern lines up. There are 60 of these repeating patterns, so it lines up to the minutes on the dial here. So wonderful, wonderful dial. And it's a repeating pattern. It may be busy for some, but it certainly has its unique character. Let's take a closer look at the dial. So around the exterior of the dial here, you have printing showing the minutes, and then in between that there is extremely tiny markings subdividing the minute marks there. When it's on your wrist, it just almost looks like it's just this gray band going around the outside, but once you get it closer, you can see that there are actually individual markings. We have applied markers. There are 3 facets on the markers at 12, what's left of the 3 o'clock, the 6, and the 9, and then there are 2 facets on the remaining markers. These markers for the hours are said by Seiko to be inspired by the stem of a cocktail glass. So there you have it. There is a date at 6, and the date window has a nice bezel around it with some beveling both inside and on the outside. There is the applied Seiko logo at underneath 12 here, and then we have some markings for Presage and automatic. Moving on to the Dauphine hands, they are silver in color and they have a crease in the middle and polished on both sides. And you have a blue seconds hand here with a very lovely little counterbalance on the other side there. So a lot going on with the dial. It's busy with this sunray pattern that you have here, but very easy to read with the shiny hands. Seiko does really an amazing job of polishing these markers here. They're like a mirror polish on there. It's not a Grand Seiko level, but for the price of this watch, it's very amazing what you get. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, the case back is open so you can see into the movement, which this is a Seiko 4R35B. This movement has a power reserve of about 41 hours. It beats at 21,600 vibrations per hour. It has a magic lever winding system, so it'll wind the watch up in either direction. And the movement is a hacking movement. So if I want to set the time to a reference time, I can adjust, wait till that moment arrives, and start the movement moving. So this Seiko Cocktail Time comes on a blue, it's a shiny blue leather strap. It does have some lighter colored blue stitching on here. It comes with a deployant buckle, which you can see is signed Seiko here. This snaps into position. Let's put that through the keeper. Lock that down. So there's our deployant. To release it, there are 2 buttons underneath. Open that up. So to adjust, use the same 2 release buttons. Pull here, and then there's a little pin in there and I can adjust it onto the strap. So nice strap. Shiny, keeping in line with, I think, the overall design of this watch. So here's the Seiko Cocktail Time on my wrist. Wearing experience with this, super comfortable. There no issues whatsoever. The way that the case back is beveled, the way it sits on your wrist, the case, everything is rounded, it's smooth, there's no sharp anything on this watch. So 40 millimeters, it's extremely light. You have the lugs sloping down so that the band can hug your wrist here. So comfortable in every way. It's not a very tall watch. So what, at 12.5 millimeters, that'll easily fit under most dress cuffs. So overall wearing experience, super comfortable, especially after some of the watches that I've had, some of the bigger, heavier ones. This has been an absolute pleasure to wear. You sometimes forget that it's even on your wrist. I will say the deployant is nice, the release on there. So overall, nice wearing experience. So what would I change on this guy? If I had free reign, I probably would clean up some of these markings around the edge. We already have a fairly busy dial with the sunray pattern, and then you put all these little tiny marks all the way around the edge. You know, if it was me, I'd probably remove that. The other thing is the exhibition case back. You know, there's not much to see on this movement. What would maybe be cool is in all the Cocktail Time watches, if they did a tinted exhibition back that kind of matched the dial. I think that would be neat, you know, something. And the strap, this shiny strap is not necessarily to my liking, but a 20 millimeter lug to lug here, you could change straps all day long. You know, if the shiny thing wasn't for you, super easy to change that out. What do I like? Well, first and foremost, I love that dial. That just the way that it plays with light when you move it around, that's killer. That I think this watch, because of the dial and the blue, the tint, just sometimes it's silver and then sometimes you turn it and it's, oh, you get a little bit of a flash of the blue. Of course, the finishing, the way on those hands, you can see how it's reflecting the light, and on the markers. So the finishing on these markers is killer. I love that crystal. I found myself wearing it and just rubbing my finger over the top of this radius here. It's so smooth, very nice, well done. And I will say I like this crown. I think that the crown, it's a little oversized, but it fits in with the watch very well. So I think it's a killer watch. And you know, I'll throw this out right now. The price, this is $425. I mean, you can't beat that. That's retail, $425 for this thing. So my takeaway, this watch, I think, is, you know, of course, it's not a tool watch. There's no lume. It's not water resistant, but that's not what it is, of course. I call this like a fancy watch, right? It's not your traditional dress watch with a plain dial, dark black dial, and just a couple indices, maybe no second hands. This has a little pizzazz or some flair going to it. So it's kind of a fun going out watch kind of a thing. And I do think that this could go guy or girl, you know. 40 millimeter, certainly wearable by a lot of wrist sizes. The lugs are kept pretty short, so the lug-to-lug distance would fit a variety of people. So once again, this is the Seiko Presage Cocktail Time SRPB43, and this comes in at $425. Hey, if you liked the video, be sure and give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and leave comments below on your thoughts on this watch. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.